Good evening. Please quiet down. My computer, I have some pictures, some slides, but my computer just froze. So I'm going to introduce the trip and what it did, and then once the computer is back up to working, you'll see some pictures in the board behind me. So, I'm just an ordinary student here from CIS. I went here 4 years ago I started, and I studied here for 3 years, and I had a tough time sometimes it was easy, sometimes it was hard. But when I was done, I was in the IB too. And one day in the IB I woke up thinking to myself, all I do is homework. It's all my life. I wake up and I do homework, I go to bed late just to do homework. I'm sure you can recognize it, if you're in DP2 at least. And by that time I said to myself, I really love biking. Imagine life if I could just wake up every day biking. So it sounds absurd, and I didn't believe that I could do that. But by the time I graduated, I had grown to believe that if I went somewhere, I could bike all the way home afterwards. I could have that life that I wanted. So I planned my trip. I decided to go to China and study Kung Fu because I always wanted to do this thing. It was a big dream of mine. So by the time I graduated CIS, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to do 4 months of Kung Fu, and then I'll follow it up by 3.5 months of biking. From China, across Central Asia and Kazakhstan, and then to Eastern Europe, through Russia, and all the way back to Denmark. That might sound like quite a bit, and it was a huge challenge, even when I set out, because I had no previous experience with long-term touring, which is what you call it when you bike very far. Let's see. So what I did, now I'm just going to find the slide. This is my background, it's from the Gobi Desert. Again, please. I don't have much time to talk to you about this, but I would like to go into details about where I went and how friendly people were. For example, how I managed to break my chain in the Gobi Desert in a big storm in the middle of nowhere. Not knowing what I should do, I just tried to figure out something. Okay, the introduction. I just said this. 4 months of Kung Fu, 2.5 months of biking. I thought it was going to be 3.5 months, but it ended up being 2.5 months. Because by the time I hit Russia, my sister emailed me, and she told me, it's quite silly, but she told me that she missed me a lot. We'd never been apart for very long. So when she emailed me, she told me I had to come home as fast as I could. So from the 3rd of July in Russia, and then all the way back to Denmark, I didn't take a single break, a single day where I didn't bike. I thought I could take some time off in Kiev and Ukraine and in Poland, but it meant more to my sister that I came home early than it would mean to me to stay in some place in Europe. What might I do this thing on? Usually people go for a big bike, a mountain bike, a big fat bike. But I wanted to go fast. I wanted to go on my usual bike. So I took my usual bike, this one, and then I bought a trailer for my bike. Let's just see. Oh. I bought a trailer for my bike, this one. And then I put on some bags in that one. There we go. That should do fine. So I bought a trailer, put my bags in that one, and then I said to myself, okay, you're not going to need that much on this trip. You're just going to bring whatever is essential. So I brought 1 pair of underpants, 1 pair of socks, one pair of tights to bike in, one t-shirt, one long sleeve t-shirt, etc. Just that way. A small tent. The tent was so small I had my face right up in the tent when I was sleeping. But I still enjoyed myself. I washed my clothes quite often, obviously. Now what I'm going to try to tell you is that you can do much more than you think, even though you're just a normal person. So as a CIS student, I started dreaming, and the dream that I got about biking home was actually really impossible at the time. I just thought to myself, I'll try, and when I fail, I'll know that at least I tried, and I took the time out to give it a shot. So that was actually what I had in mind when I left Denmark for China. Let's see, the first time I spent in China was in the Kung Fu camp. And a Kung Fu camp in China is much like a school, only with physical abuse and teachers that are very, very mean. They hit you, they kick you, they punch you when you do something wrong. And if you don't like it, you can tell them, and then they'll stop. But they won't focus as much on your training. Every morning we had a meeting. There was a big bell, this enormous bell. So by the time we woke up, we had to be downstairs after 1 minute. And if we didn't go downstairs, we had to wake up at 5:30. If we didn't get down there, we had to do push-ups, even though we were sore from the previous days. So we had meetings like this for lunch. For every training session, we had a meeting before and after. We go down, talk about what we're going to do, and then we go for a run. All of the students are formed in groups, just like here in a school, where you have a class. Just there you get to live with each other, you live with a roommate, and one of the most important things I learned that I think you can use too is that when you're in a class or in a group and you're working together, you all have different abilities. A Pakistani guy taught me this. He told me that even though we have different abilities, just like a hand, like one is a thumb, he's small and fat, but quite strong. Another one is the index finger, he might be quite longer than the thumb, but not as strong. He's got some other abilities, and so does the pinky. Even though it's not very tall, not very strong, it's still very important, because when you combine the group, it forms a fist. And when you have the fist, you have much more power than even if you have 5 strong thumbs. So even here in the Kung Fu camp, that was what we tried to work on. And every week we had a test, just like in school. We were tested, and we were told by the headmaster who was the better, who was the worst. And whoever was the worst, it's not like in school where you go home and you say, oh shit, I got a bad grade. You come back, and then the trainer go out, he says to you, get on the floor. And you get on the floor on your fist. And then you have to stand on your fist on gravel until he tells you to get up. And it's just to remind you that you have to focus, you have to work hard for this. It really matters. It's not just for fun. It's for fun, but it's also because you want to commit to it. So that's one of the main lessons from the Kung Fu camp. Of course, we lived with the Chinese kids. We were learning Chinese, so we were trying to speak Chinese, and I'm so as Danish as they come. I eat cereal for breakfast, I eat rye bread all day long. If I could, I would just stay in Denmark and just enjoy myself. I am such a Dane. But when I came there, I had to eat rice, I had to learn Chinese, and I've never learned an Asian language before. So it's quite a challenge. But these people were so friendly and so welcoming that by the time I left there, I was capable of having a normal conversation in Chinese and eating Chinese. I actually started to like the Chinese food and the rice and no rye bread, no fresh milk. And that's because the Chinese were so kind. Why do I say this to you? I try to say this to you because when I was in the IBI,